William Kirwa, and several guests and attendees who are already in this webinar. I think we have over 100 already online. Good morning.
Good morning.
Today is a great time for us, irrespective of the challenge of COVID-19, that we are able to engage one another and discuss various issues that touches our country, and also the opportunities that presents itself to us and which we can do. We as Konza Technopolis Development Authority are pleased to host this event and very excited that our peers accepted to be our key speaker in this event and to share what our ministry and our government is doing in respect to food security during this COVID-19 and even beyond. And we at Konza Technopolis are looking forward to ensuring that the Konza Technopolis project coming to a complete fruition within the shortest time possible. At this stage, I just want to briefly inform you that the project is fully on course. There are two critical pillars that need to make this project a success. One is to ensure we have really world-class infrastructure and services. And the second one is to really build a solid platform and ecosystem to support innovation, technology, and knowledge economy. And food security is one of the beneficiaries of this second pillar, is ensuring we have a solid innovation, technology, and knowledge economy platform for our country. We are currently with the construction of the horizontal infrastructure and also the establishment of the research institute. I can hear some echoes. So one of the key things we are doing is to ensure the infrastructure is in place, and the contractor currently is doing all the roads and the amenities that are required for a city. We welcome you to see that at our site in some time future. You can visit us at our website, our Twitter handle, to see what's the progress. We have pictures of what's going on. We assure you it's real world class. We have also the National Data Center currently under construction. We are at 40%, and the phase one part of it is actually ready, and very soon we are ready to host national data and run the national applications that support government and even the private sector. So we are ready to be the digital platform for the country and the region. We are also at the advanced stage of starting the construction of the Research Institute with the partnership and support of the Korean government. We are now at the tendering stage to bring on board the contractor. Designs are completed. The project is fully funded. So within about 3 months or so, we should have the construction of the Research Institute, which will offer masters and PhD, and borrowing closely on the experience and expertise of the Korean experience. And we are proud that one of the programs to be run in that institute is agriculture, and will focus on aspects of technology, use of technology to advance agriculture, and the other related engineering programs like civil engineering, electrical, and ICT. So in brief, that's information about Konza. Maybe want to add, we are already operating from Konza. Our office is operational. We don't have any other office in Nairobi. The current office is in Konza. In respect to the current discussion, Konza Technopolis will indeed play a platform by enabling the knowledge economy. The core part being the Research Institute will play a critical role. The ICT platform we have put at Konza Technopolis will provide a platform where ideas to address the issues, whether from the farm to the dinner table in terms of the food security, can be hosted. So we're looking to host all those kind of great ideas that our people have in respect to addressing the challenges in the entire food chain. The other important thing is that the National Data Center also will host a platform where data can be hosted and analyzed and can be used for decision making, and also can guide our policy making. So without much ado, I think in brief, that is what I can give in respect to Konza Technopolis. We're looking forward to really advance the area of life sciences, which is so key to Konza Technopolis takeoff. There are 3 areas: life sciences, ICT, engineering. So today we have discussion about life sciences. And so without much ado, it's my pleasure to invite our moderator, William Kirwa, who is an expert himself in the agricultural sector and financing sector. So he will take us through in the moderation of this event and guide us on how we'll operate. And before the rest, of course, we'll have our chief guest, who is Professor Amadi Boka. But before that, William Kirwa, welcome.
Thank you, engineer. I'm happy to be able to join you guys and in this webinar. Now, the aspect and the issue of agribusiness and agriculture is very important, especially when we are talking about food security. And in the production of agriculture, things have moved forward. We're looking at issues of food security. We're looking at issues of food safety. We're looking at issues of ensuring that the foods are prepared and reach the market in a faster and safer way. And this opportunity that Konza City is giving us is to look at how we can leverage on technology. How can we use technology in terms of reaching out and providing services to agribusiness and those people in the agricultural sector so that they have the information they need and anything else that they require to be able to be effective in their production. So, ladies and gentlemen, the way this session will happen is that we will have a guest speaker coming in shortly. And then once we have the guest speaker, we will have some panelists who will also join us. And the panelists will join us basically to also speak on 1 or 2 things. And we are focusing on how we can leverage IT in agricultural production. And when I talk about the agricultural production, I am looking at all value chains in the agricultural sector. I am also looking at all the crops that are available within the sector, especially mainly the crops that are very important for production. And I'm also looking at aspects of production, aspects of course, storage, aspects of delivery to the market, the packaging and all that. So basically we're saying, how do we leverage technology, including the information the producers need, including the information those guys in the sector need to be able to exchange. Do we have a marketing platform? Do we have an information system? Do we have a system that we can ensure that those who are producing can be able to communicate to those who are consuming? The other aspect, of course, are what we call the support services within the sector, what the government can provide in leveraging the sector, what the private sector can do, availing of financial services through IT, ensuring that we can leverage fintech companies to ensure they can provide these services. So that's all we are focusing on to see how we can promote this. So ladies and gentlemen, allow me now to invite Professor Amadi Boga, I hope he's there, who will give a keynote speech, and then we will go to the other things. Obviously, please put your mics off. If you are not speaking, put your mics off. You can also put your video off. Please. If you are not speaking, but you may wish to put it, but your mics, please put it off when you are not speaking so that we can be able to move forward. And of course, there's an opportunity for you to raise up your hand in this system to be able to make your contribution. So I'll be observing all that so that we can move forward. So allow me now to invite Professor Amadi Boga, who is a researcher. He has been a vice chancellor. He's a very experienced person in the sector and is currently the permanent secretary in the Department of Agriculture and Research. Maybe Professor Boga, welcome.
Thank you very, very much, moderator. I see a lot of familiar people, names, faces that we interact with in the sector, either from counties or from the media or from some of the actors. I hope I had requested the team there to support me because my screen cannot be shared. Something is not right, but thank you very much for this opportunity. And just to start us off, in the ministry, we are charged with the issue of food security. And as soon as COVID happened, of course, we struggled with the health measures to respond to the crisis. But it was very clear for us in the ministry that the next crisis, once we start confining people and locking down towns, will be a food crisis. And as you are aware, Kenya is not yet fully food secure. We have to import food. Just a moment. Sorry, somebody was calling me on the same line that I'm using. Now, so we were very sure that immediately the next crisis would be a food crisis, and that a lockdown or closure of businesses and stopping of farmers was never in the option. And we needed quickly to come up with measures to make sure that we provide the appropriate response. Can you go to the next slide, please? Next slide. Whoever is pushing the slides, can they move to the next slide?
Yes.
They need to enable anything.
Sorry, Prof. What we can do is whoever is controlling this can give those options to Prof to be able to move the slides, please.
I think the problem is from my end, because I'm using the browser, the slide sharing function is not enabled. I tried to download the app. It is too complicated. They have too many things I need to do to register, and there's no time for that. So if the person can just say, is it Ian who is doing it? If we can just be...
This is just, I'm supporting you with the slide. For the purpose of the meeting, I will try to ensure that I coordinate with you. What I need to have is you would probably tell me the slide number, so we move together.
Number two, yeah, exactly.
This is number 2.
So before COVID, we had our food security outcome up to 2022 well figured out, which was to reduce the cost of food from 45% to 25% of the household income. At 45%, we are the second highest in the world, second only to Nigeria. We were to reduce the number of food insecure Kenyans from 10% to 5%. Right now, the number of food insecure Kenyans is around 4 million when there is a crisis, around 5 million there, and when it's normal, it's around 1.4. So we wanted to have that. Those are the goals that the president set for us. Reduce malnutrition. And the chronic malnutrition is in 26% of under 5-year-old children. We wanted to bring that down to about 19%. And increase agriculture contribution to GDP from 2.7 trillion to 4.7 trillion. We have almost attained that one. But of course, all these aspirations are threatened seriously by COVID. We also had a vision to create about 1,000 SMEs, production SMEs, with 600,000 direct jobs and also indirect jobs. And then the most significant was to increase the average daily income of farmers. Right now, farmers earn on average, smallholder farmer in particular, 465 Kenya shillings per day. Wanted to push that up to about 625 shillings per day by 2022. It assumed things would be normal, everything would be working. It didn't assume COVID. Go to slide 3. Josephine, go to slide 3. Yeah. So in slide 3, immediately we came into office. That is 2018. We concluded this agriculture sector growth and transformation strategy, which had these 9 pillars, where we were going to increase small-scale farmer incomes by targeting 1 million farmers, pastoralists, and fisher folks in 40 zones that we had mapped. and create what we were calling farmer-facing SMEs to support farmers, a smallholder farmer. I don't know what happened, it's gone. The other pillar that we created was the one on e-voucher, which has been talked about. You remember the story of fertilizer disappearing and being given to the wrong farmers. That is pillar number 2 right there. And we changed that by just making sure that the farmer receives a voucher and they goes to the agrovet and they get their fertilizer or other inputs that they need. After all, the farmer doesn't just need fertilizer. Over the years, overuse of DAP had created soil acidity, reducing productivity among the smallholder farmer. On average, we produce 1.5 metric tons of maize per hectare, which is way below the average in the other countries in the region. And that is because some of the programs that we had for supporting smallholder farm were not properly attuned. So that was a major plan. Yeah, major. Yeah, and then the other anchor, apart from working with smallholder farmer to increase their incomes and refine the support we extend to them, the other one was a pillar for growth, an anchor for growth, which means increasing agricultural output. We are not going to increase agricultural output by just working with smallholder farmer who make 70% of our farmers. Especially for the staple crops like maize, we need large-scale farms. So the idea was to unlock 50 new large-scale farms supported by irrigation in public land that is owned by public institution. That's pillar 4. And pillar 3 supports 6 agro-processing zones, which are designed according to value chains and according to the regions. So this is a pillar for growth, value addition, agro-processing, supporting the manufacturing pillar of the Big 4 agenda. And basically in a system that works, the smallholder farmer, the large-scale farmer, all of them have to feed into an agro-processing zones. And these 2 pillars are very critical, even for raising income of smallholder farmer. Finally, we have the anchor that we call the anchor for resilience, boosting household food resilience. This is key because of climate change, and it's key because of post-harvest losses and storage associated with NCPB and the strategic food reserve. So pillar 5, which we have been working on in the last year, I think you've heard, we have reformed the strategic food reserve, merged it with NCPB, and we are moving forward to create new structures there, which will use the warehouse receipting system to manage food reserve as well as to support commodity trade through the commodity exchange. So that is quite a complex undertaking there that we are running away with, and we hope we can conclude. And finally, of course, these 1.2 million Kenyans in ASAL areas, we have a raft of programs to make sure that they have access to fodder, access to water, access to hay sheds and other measures that will enable them to survive, because their food insecurity is brought about mostly by drought. But now we have emerging challenges like locusts, like COVID and others, which are pushing more people into food insecurity and which we need to react to. So these are what we call anchors. The 3 you see there, they are the anchors of the strategy, and they are supported by 3 enabler. Enabler 1 is, of course, capacity building. We have to do a lot of capacity building within the ministry, the counties, and also within the private sector and among the farmers. And we are working with partners to develop serious capacity building programs so that our farming is knowledge intensive. And the other anchor, of course, is strengthening research, innovation, and launch priority digital and data use cases. So this is the whole space of ICT in agriculture. So we have a full pillar on ICT, data and research. and I hope Akuk is here, and Tom Dieng I've seen. They can also speak to this. And for this pillar, because it was very important, we went ahead and launched a digital strategy for agriculture, which is on our website. So we have the STGS, which has a digital pillar, and the digital pillar already has a strategy of its own, and I will talk to it later. And finally, is risk management. That is the final pillar, where we are looking at what are the risks, be they economic shocks, be they climate shocks like drought, floods, be they diseases like now COVID, before we had fall armyworm, the other time we have locusts. So it looks like we are in the era of crisis. So Pillar 9 is just to enable us to prepare for risks. Unfortunately, we had not unbundled the Pillar 9 before the locusts, before the COVID, but now the COVID has forced us to unbundle Pillar 9 so that we develop the structures that are needed for crisis, because all manner of crises seem to impact on agriculture. Go to the next slide, which is slide number 4. Slide number 4, yeah. So we have created a food security war room, and I hope some of you are members are there. You know what we're doing. We're working with McKinsey to guide us through the process of managing the crisis in the food security war room. You'll see the other teams, but mainly is to make sure that COVID or no COVID, we have food, and that food is available everywhere and can be accessed and is affordable. Just go to the next slide, number 5. And this is the way we have set for COVID the key goals: ensure availability, accessibility, and affordability of food and water, support for subsistence and livestock farmers and fisher folks, and maintain agricultural output and value addition. Basically, that's what means, in short, agriculture must go on. Almost 60% of our GDP is dependent on agriculture. If agriculture stops, then I don't know what will happen. But I think apart from not being able to feed ourselves, most of our exports are from tea, coffee, macadamia, and all these other agricultural products. And if we are not able to export flowers, our income, our GDP will greatly be impacted, and our economy will be greatly impacted. And so we have these 10 areas that we have identified as interventions. That includes making sure production is going on, ensuring minimal disruption to markets and access to food and water for the population, making sure that we are tracking the prices and that they are not, there is no hoarding, people are not taking advantage of the situation. And then we look at stocks and storage across the counties for the various foods. And of course, we have mentioned production. And then food for the vulnerable population and water, that they are able to get that. And of course, we have to continue input supply and extension support smallholder farmers, and also manage the locusts. Most people have forgotten about them, but they're still around. And then make sure that large-scale farms are able to produce and there are no disruption, that our exports are also flowing. Just go to, so the county governments are involved, and also the private sector is involved in this conversation. Go to the next slide, number 6. Yeah, so we have formed teams. We have identified the key interventions and the deliverables for these 10 items. And I will ask the organizers to share so that I don't have to go through everything, and the successful indicators. So the teams are in the ministry, and some of them are here. They are listening. They can talk to some of the issues. But on the back end, they are supported by McKinsey and other consultants and other private sector players. So we have formed working groups for each of these items. Those who want to join, I think, can get in touch with the contact person and identify areas where you can make an input. The next slide, number 7. Yeah, and basically it's still tracking those work streams and the progress that has been made. Basically what we see is that we have been able to work with the counties to track food in the counties that usually produce a surplus for the key commodities. You'll see that. And we have identified 45 key markets, and we are monitoring what is going on there. You'll see that further ahead. And we're also monitoring prices. And we are looking at, we have a food balance sheet, which we keep on updating. And the food balance sheets are on our website. And the team is regularly monitoring what is happening there. And we have assessed the inputs, like do we have enough fertilizer? Do we have enough pesticides? Yes, we have. Yes to both questions. And we are also in conversation with the players there to make sure that there are no disruptions. And we are continuing the locust interventions. We'll talk to that. And of course, the large farmers, whoever is having challenges, we have a mobile, what is it called, this hotline, where they can call, and then we see how to undo any challenge. And of course, we are maintaining constant communication. This is part of that. And the teams are updating this on a weekly basis. So this is an older slide because I needed to set the background, but we have information as late as yesterday. Next slide, number 8. So this is how we are tracking the food availability. We mostly source is county, and normally we track monthly, but now we have to intensify so that we can at least do it weekly. And we are working with the CECs. So each county has formed a food security war room down there from where we get data. We have a project called the Agriculture Sector Development Support Program, which has technical people all the way to the ground to support the counties with the issues of data. And I think there's an app for collecting data. Why are we going backwards? Yeah. And then, of course, food accessibility by looking at the status of markets and stock levels in key markets. And then affordability, we are looking at the prices of key commodities. Next slide. Number 9, yeah. So this is the data we got from the counties for the key cereals, legumes, meat, vegetables, tubers. Some we have data, some we don't have data, especially the ones for livestock, some of the vegetables, but we'll bridge those gaps. And when we looked in the counties, the data at that time showed that whatever they had was those quantities that are given there in the 16 counties, and they had sufficient supply. But we expanded to make sure that every county reports. Some counties usually lag behind, and so it creates a problem with data. And we always knew this, that data collection is a problem. People are not very serious with it. In the past, we used to have national government officials down there doing data collection, but now agriculture is devolved, and we have to live with that. And we have to get them to accept the responsibility of sharing data. Just that, sharing data, because it's important for decision making. Some are proactive and they provide their data and they're up to date. Others are still lagging behind, either because of capacity or other reasons. But it's important that this must work for us to be able to have concrete data. Next slide. Next slide, yeah. This is the data on markets as at that reporting time. 40 out of the 45 key markets tracked were operational, but they were reporting supply challenges. I think this was at the beginning, people didn't know what lockdown means. And they thought life would stop, but and that people will not be able to pick food. And that is why it was very essential that we moved very quickly to reassure the public and farmers and consumers that food is the most essential of all services. And a food crisis will make a COVID crisis look very small once people haven't had food for a week or so. So we have been talking with the counties to make sure that we get data from all markets, not just the large one, so that we are sure that food is moving. And of course, we have organizations like Twiga and Copia who are in logistics, and they are part of the food security war room, giving us information as to how things are happening down there. I've seen Jonjo inside here, so maybe when the time comes, he can comment. This is not just me giving information, but sharing so that we can learn from all our collective experiences. Next slide. Slide number 10. Yeah, so this is the slide on prices, same commodities in the markets, looking at the prices, especially in the West because of challenges with Western border, with the Uganda border. Their price have gone up between 20 to 50%. But on average, there have been an increase in price between 5 to 15%. I've told the team to analyze to see where are the prices usually at this time of the year on a normal year. And are these increases because of COVID or just normal yearly increases? So we'll get that data so that we can actually get to the root cause of the price increases. Next slide. Yeah, on average, because we usually have the food balance sheet in the ministry, that is cumulative from June, from July, 1st July, from the harvest that come from the long rains, and the harvest that come from the short rains. So our calendar year for the food balance sheet is from 1st July to 30th June. And it shows based on what was produced and what was produced in the long rain and short rains, and what was imported, and projection of import flow, and projection on consumption, that we have a healthy food balance sheet up to June. June, July, we will have challenges, especially with maize, and we approved the importation of 2 million bags. And the Gazette notice is out there, 2 million bags for white and 2 million bags for yellow. And the Gazette notice is out there. And otherwise, the others, we have sufficient stock. Key is we must make sure that the Tanzania border works and Uganda border works so that the imports that come from there continue to flow and there is no interruption, there is no disruption. So we have to keep on monitoring this data to avoid any unpleasant surprises. Yeah, next slide. Yeah, let me shift gears to locust. In the food security war room, we're also tracking the issue of locusts. This map shows, I don't know, this strip here, is everybody able to see the whole map? All the way down. So they want the key to be visible. And
yes, we are.
Yeah. So basically, you can see on my side. I'm not seeing it because there is this strip which is interfering with my visibility. Yeah.
Yes, the red.
Yeah. So the red is swamps, and the green is hopper bands. And 1st to 7th April, before that, we had tracked the swamps 24th to 31st March. So we are getting weekly updates on this. And mostly they were in Garissa, Isiolo, bits of Meru, bits of Nyeri, Nakuru, Samburu, Marsabit, in that part of Kenya. And we are tracking the swarms and spraying them where we can. And we are also tracking the hoppers. Hoppers are the young ones, and also spraying them. We have enough pesticides right now, 90,000 liters to manage. We have 6 aircraft for spraying. We have 2 helicopters for surveillance. We have 600 NYS trained to do the spraying down there. And we have, of course, teams from the ministries and the counties working together, including county commissioners. On the Mandera side, Wajir side, parts of Garissa, because of insecurity, sometimes it's hard to get data. But some sampling there shows that maybe they might not be there. Our biggest worry is Somalia, because there's no control going on in Somalia. And so if the winds blows them in this direction, we have to keep on fighting them. Sometimes they have crossed over to Uganda, but they haven't stayed for long. They have come back, maybe because of the wind situation. Next slide. And this data is provided by a software called eLocust M, where the people on the ground, they feed the data into the mobile app. It goes to FAO-ROM, and then it is turned into maps that are then shared with us so that we are together. So this data is a strong partnership with FAO. And you can see here, there is a calendar for production. Right now we're in April, and we have started planting. We expect to start harvesting in July. And that, at the same time, we have locusts at various stages, which we are wrestling with. It looks like maybe by August, we'll start seeing them going northwards, whatever we will not have been able to control. Because I think in the next 2 weeks, they'll start laying the second generation of locust bred in Kenya. We have a first generation of locust bred in Kenya, which we are wrestling with. But these are in a lot of locusts. It's the biggest locust invasion in 70 years. And we have worked with partners to make sure that it doesn't destabilize our food security. And we try as much as possible for agricultural counties where they're planting. Every time they report, we act very quickly to spray, like Nakuru, like Kipia. But it's a tall order. And it's something that we were not used to. We had a team, but it was very small, because it's one of those things you prepare for. But if it hasn't come in 70 years, sometimes you assume maybe it will not come in 70 years. And then bang, you have this situation that we are wrestling with. But I think we are managing. Next slide. Josephine, yeah. So this is the way it looks, the forecast. You can see Kenya, Ethiopia, Somalia bear the brunt of this crisis. The other countries like Uganda are threatened. The countries in gray, in the other yellow, like Saudi Arabia, they have infestations, but they are not at the danger level. They are serious. And then the green is usually their territory. These places where the Sahara is, Algeria, Mauritania, that is the territory of the desert locusts in the Saudi Arabia. Kenya is an invasion country where they stray once in a while. But you can see, I think because of climate issues, and because of favorable weather conditions, this year they have decided to camp here. Because most of the time they move to look for food. But if it's green all the way to Marsabit, why would you move? So we have to keep this fight. And the current rains are posing a problem. So we are linking very well with the Met department to see whether we'll get windows where we can spray. Otherwise, then we have to, because we can't risk lives of pilots, and also those who are tracking in the rain is tough. And of course, pesticides in the rain are useless. Next slide. Yeah, so post-COVID, I think just go to the next slide. We have our strategy, which I've explained. Post-COVID, we have, even the COVID is part of this strategy because it's Pillar 9 where we are doing a response to a crisis that is impacting on food security in the country. So post-COVID, it means even as we take care of COVID, we have to take care of it in the context of this strategy. It's not an aberration. It's something that our strategy anticipated. And very critical for us is the growth pillar, or the anchor, which talks about increased agricultural output and value addition. This is where we will grow. We will not grow from the smallholder farmer. We will grow with the large farms and with agro-processing hubs. This was our focus. Both of these were on their way to cabinet before COVID happened. And we have not suspended them. Consultations are going on so that that part can be unleashed. I think that is where the biggest potential is. I can just tell you, Galana Kulalu alone is 2 million acres of land, which we are not using optimally. And we need to find a solution for that. The State Department of Livestock has over 2 million hectares. I'm talking hectares, not even acres, which is not being used optimally. ADC has other farms, very large, not used optimally. Calro, prisons, the KVDAs of this world, the CDAs and the TARDAs and NIB, all of these have a lot of land which they are not farming, they are holding, which in private sector hands, properly managed, can solve the food security challenges. But at the same time, working with the smallholder farmer, we need to maybe change our extension model, and we are working with FAO to do that, and other organizations like AGRA, so that we can use accelerators. Accelerators are organizations like One Acre Fund, TechnoServe, B4D, and all these NGOs that are working in the agriculture sector and doing a good job, working with them on the extension side to hold the hands of smallholder farmers to make them produce efficiently and most likely move them to high-value crops. You know, when a smallholder farmer, the typical one that we know, goes to farm, science is very far from their minds. They just want to get the seed, plant. They don't, only 4% of our farmers do soil testing. Fertilizer, they will apply it if the county brings. If it doesn't, they'll just plant the seed, weed and wait and see what comes. The result is that some farms, 1 acre, you get maybe 2 bags in some places, I know, when the optimal is 50 bags. So bridging this productivity gap is a key area for maize, but shifting them also to high-value crops and involving youth is a major area that we are going to have a big conversation with all of you and the other stakeholders. And of course, the reforms that Strategic Food Reserve, NCPB, and the e-voucher rollout. Actually, we are in discussions with World Bank to support the e-voucher so that we can reach these 1 million farmers. And they seem excited by it because they want to use it as a model for the African region. We are in discussions with the IFC on the large-scale farms. We are in discussions with the African Development Bank on the agro-processing hubs so that we can see some of the models that have been applied successfully across the continent. And we are in discussions with the IFC again on the warehouse receipting system as a way of commodity trade and the privatization of NCPB. So we are on track, and we will not get sidetracked from this because this is the real deal. And the crisis is an event that we must learn from. And the war room will transit into the Agricultural Transformation Office because the stakeholders in the war room are the same ones we need in the ATO. Next slide. Next slide. Because the people here are digital types, I told you that we had done a digital strategy supported by USAID through Agra, and done together with McKinsey. And we had identified these 7 digital use cases. We know there are many use cases out there, 100 use cases, I think above 100 that we could tell. Calro alone has 27 apps, I'm sure now they have gone up to maybe above 30 because they are quite creative. But those are not the ones that we worry about as government. The ones we have listed here are the ones we worry about as government, which is the issue of farmer registration, and then targeting those registered eligible farmers for the interventions from the ministry, including incentives like fertilizer, agrochemicals, of course, improving farmer practices through e-extension. We have right now an e-extension service with one of the AgTech NGOs. But also we have the AgroWeather app, which is supported by World Bank and anchored in the big data. Moderator, control that. So we have the big data platform at Calro. So that is coming together with all the data collected over the years. And then, of course, we have a digital monitoring tool. This is already developed for maize, but we want now to develop it for other crops, to expand it to other crops, to monitor food in case of emergencies like this. So the digital food balance sheet for maize is already being used in the ministry. And then, of course, an early warning system for price because of situations like this. We haven't developed this, but I think out of this, we'll emerge with a system for monitoring price stability and guiding financial decisions by the government. And then, of course, the land in Kenya, everybody tries to grow maize everywhere. And yet we have different agroecological zones that are suited for different things. Working with under the SDSP program, we have done value chain mapping for the whole country. And it's not just about agroecological zone. It's also about markets. It's about demand for a particular product, as well as logistics. So we have a map of the value chains and where they should be. And using digital solutions, we pushing to focus on land optimization, including optimization with climate, with water availability, and other inputs that are necessary for value chain selection for farmers. So that people don't instinctively plant maize just because they must eat ugali, even when it doesn't give them an advantage. One of the conversations I've had with the Orodi of University of Nairobi, very interesting, saying anybody with less than 5 acres should not grow maize as a commercial crop because they are not going to make much money. And the idea of increasing farmer income will never be realized if people with less than 5 acres are growing maize, because the maximum you can get for a bag of maize is 3,000, and maybe you have used 2,000 to grow it. So, and since you're farming suboptimally, you get your 10 bags. It's not much money. You can do the math, especially after waiting for 6 months. But this is a cultural conversation that we need to have because people have grown up on maize and they instinctively they go to it. Yeah, and but the whole debate about genetics is key because our farmers are still using very poor genetics, And yet Calro and the CG centers are here. They have developed superior genetics, but because of mazoea, that being familiarity brings conservatism. So people don't want to change to more high value, high producing, high yielding varieties. Even within maize, if you go to Kitale, it's 614. It's 614 since 1976 when it was developed. When Calro has superior, shorter varieties which yield more and which are suited to the times. And so that is another conversation. Of course, we need to use digital tools for monitoring and evaluation of our programs. We have many programs. In the ministry, we have over 20 programs. And keeping track of them is a big challenge. And using the Agricultural Transformation Office, developing the monitoring and evaluation dashboards will enable us to track these issues properly so that we can make right decisions and also engage our stakeholders better. But I realize all of you have data, we have data, other public institutions have data, and everybody is, we don't have a framework. So the most important framework is number 7, to develop a common framework for data sharing and use and ownership. And this is what we picked for the ministry. Some of it we have made progress, some of it we are still looking for partners to develop. And so I think with that, let me stop there. I hope it wasn't too long. And I hope I was able to fulfill the expectations of the organizers as far as what they needed to know was concerned. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Professor, for that very wonderful and enlightening presentation. Maybe, I don't know how many minutes you have with us, but I would want to post a few questions because yes. What I intend to, yes, would take you, I don't know how many minutes you have with us, sir.
I can spare 10.
Okay, we would want to stay longer with you. So there are a few questions that will be short, and I would want to encourage participants, if you are not able to...
But moderator.
Yes, sir.
We'll go all the way up to 12, don't worry.
Oh, thank you very much. So before I call a few panelists, let's just take 2 questions from the presenters that have, not presenters, from the conversation. And one of the questions that has come strongly, sir, is that there are 2 questions. One is about the feeds for livestock that is still very high, whether we can be able to see how to address that. How do we handle the issue of availability of water? Because one of the greatest things if we have to really produce is to ensure that there is water availability. The third one that participants have raised is about agro-processing. How has it been how has it been structured so that the government can support agro-processing? And then there is the issue of post-harvest losses. How are we dealing with that, and how much is it at the moment? Maybe you can address those 4 questions.
Yeah, post-harvest losses are right now at around 15%. Of course, in the last rainy season, there was too much rain, so it could have gone up. We are still tracking the data on that. But I think the way we tackle the problem of post-harvest losses is not from a government point of view. It is from a private sector point of view. And that is why we are reforming NCPB so that it becomes a warehouse, a commercial warehouse, and we are leasing a large part of the warehouses to the private sector so that we can put in place in the warehouse receipting system so that people don't keep their maize in their granaries at home. Because most of the losses, especially from maize, is because of infestation with weevils and all manner of things, because people don't have the knowledge of managing this. So most of the countries that have managed, especially with cereals and other commodities, is because they have professionalized and privatized their warehousing. So it's an opportunity for investors, and we want to make it available for investors to invest. It's really, I've gone to Kitale when they're harvesting, and you just want to cry why we are handling food that way in the 21st century, when we are a very entrepreneurial country. Why are we stocking maize? Why are we carrying the maize to the homestead and drying it in the sun? Why aren't service providers seeing this as an opportunity to go and invest to support those farmers, or even farmer groups themselves? Every time you try it through government, it doesn't go well because of challenges of governance. So it's better if the private sector came in, and then we support through maybe capacity building and knowledge transfer, but the investments for them to be sustainable have to be through private sector. The agro-processing conversation has just begun. You know, the challenge with agro-processing is supply, the steadiness of supply. We have some mango factories in some counties, but they operate like for 3 months and then there is no supply. So we must build up from the smallholder farmer to large-scale farmer to the agro-processor. So it must be properly planned, and we are discussing with the African Development Bank how to develop large agro-processing hubs for selected value chains. This means creating what we call rural transformation clusters, where people grow the same thing, they specialize in a value chain, and it is linked all the way to the processor so that they don't struggle with the issue of markets. But this is, again, a conversation, because we have to move our people from growing food for themselves to growing food for the market. And so we have to define the market, including the agro-processing part. And I think once we had started this conversation, we got derailed a bit, but we'll go back to it so that we design a model for the 6 regions according to the county economic blocks, specializing in specific value chains, of course, working with the counties. There's a consultant already working on that model. And as we develop it, we'll share with you. On the availability of water, this is all, what Kenya is a water scarce country. And building dams takes a long time. And even as we continue building dams, the water is required for different uses across the country. And of course, the State Department of Irrigation through NIB has an elaborate master plan for building dams across the country. But you can see they are very, very expensive. And then they face governance challenges, and then they get stalled. Contract management, even a project like Galana Kulalu creates a lot of problems. But there are farmers in Kenya. One is a farmer called Stuart Baden. He's just out here in Machakos, in a place which receives 300 millimeters of rain. And through conservation agriculture, he's able to grow 2 crops in a year. He's able to grow wheat and achieve very high tonnage. He's able to grow sorghum, millet, sorghum. He's able to grow chickpeas, and he's able to grow Sudan grass for fodder. And he's doing very well. And he's on 1,100 hectares, just out here in Machakos. It's a place people can visit to see. But there are venture farms in Timau who are doing wheat, canola, and even dairy and other produce. They are all doing so on conservation agriculture. And they are able to take care of the soil well, and they are able to produce 2 seasons in a year. And they are practicing very simple textbook things like crop rotation, like especially crop rotation, where you don't use the same crop in 4 years in the same plot. You move them around, and only such simple measures, and zero tillage and crop protection is able to manage disease, is able to manage the issue of water. And even when you go, when it's dry, I've visited some of these farms as a way of just checking. And you find in the middle of February, when it's dry everywhere, you dig into their soil, there's water conserved there. That's what conservation agriculture does. It's a challenge for smallholder because of tools, but it's a technology that we must really embrace. Australia lives on conservation agriculture. The US, most of the large farms live on conservation agriculture. Our problem is getting the smallholder to understand and practice conservation agriculture. But I think we can continue that conversation as days go by. The issue of feeds, I agree, feeds is a problem because we don't, most feeds are maize-based and or soya. And there are some controversial things that we have to do maybe or think about. Number one, of course, we can have more farmers growing for fodder, like what Stuart is doing in Machakos. But we need genetics so that KALRO has to be challenged, bring in better genetics, including working with international partners, because some of these genetic resources belong to the whole world. And there are protocols that are there for sharing knowledge and technology, and we can take advantage of them so that we don't cling to just what we have. But at the same time, of course, we have been having conversation with AKEFEMA. This is the Animal Feed Millers Association, to import yellow maize at zero duty, so that we can make our animal feed cheaper. And this is this year we have approval for 2 million bags, which can take them for 6 months. But the whole idea of importing should be just a stopgap measure. We need to develop our own feed production lines, because with 300 millimeters of rain, we can produce food, as had been demonstrated by Adventure and Stuart Baden and all the people who are practicing conservation agriculture. And these are opportunities for youth. I think the biggest challenge we have is that our farmers are aging, so adoption of technology is a problem. The average age of the farmer is 60 years, and the average age of the consumer is 17 years. So we have to get these 20-year-olds, 25-year-olds, 30-year-olds into farming, where the biggest opportunity is. Manufacturing will take a long time. And of course, farming and border riding, sometimes border riding looks cool, but I think farming provides a big opportunity, especially if they are well organized into farmer groups and they're able to control the whole value chain. Yeah, but on the animal feed front, we hope with the stopgap measure of importing yellow maize, we can get around to that. Another measure is, when the biggest challenge we struggle with in crop production is pests, armyworm, stalk borer, locusts, all this. We have to move towards better technology, including genetic engineering technologies, to shield our crops from losses. A pest like fall armyworm can get to about 40% loss, and our farmers cannot afford that, and neither can we. And we have to overcome some of the inhibitions we have with new technologies, because some of these things, it's just a matter of time. They will be the new norm. Yes.
We will now be able, thank you very much for that wonderful presentation. There are several other comments that we will address as we go along. Somebody raising the issue of residue levels in food, and maybe of major concern that I think probably you need to address is this COVID situation. If it continues, somebody saying, if it continues for the next 2 months or so, how will the people around urban areas be able to access food? Because what is happening is there's got to be a way of transporting food in a manner that it should be able to reach the consumer while it is safe and it is in good condition. So I don't know what measures the minister has done to ensure that continues in this COVID period, because again, it's about food security and availability.
Yeah, we have issued guidelines to the police, to the county commissioners, to food producers, food processors. These guidelines are on the website. Food transportation is an essential service. It must remain uninterrupted. And this is a global understanding, not even just our own understanding here. So food from East Africa, from COMESA, must continue flowing, and food from the global food supply chains must remain open. This is the way it has been understood globally. We had a conference the other week with African Union and FAO to look at some of these challenges. And we see that food is moving. Initially, there was that fear, but right now food is moving. Part of the strategy of the ministry and the government is that those who can afford food must get it. Because if the food doesn't flow, that means then we have to feed everybody. And I don't think we are in a position to do that. So the position of the ministry and the government is that you should be able to go to your kiosk and buy your food from there. Even the people who are being supported by government, the poor, the vulnerable, they are giving 2,000 shillings so that they can go to the kiosk and get their food from there. I think, I'm not sure whether it's weekly or monthly, but that's why we have adopted cash transfer and not physical food distribution, because there exists already supply chains that are well managed by the private sector, and we don't want to have army lorries running around carrying food to distribute in the traditional way. I think we are too sophisticated for that.
Thank you very much, Prof. Since you're still around, we will channel some of the questions that come along as we go on this. Maybe I would really want to sincerely appreciate your presentation. You are taking time and even giving us this very big body of knowledge that is domiciled at the Ministry of Agriculture, that I think will help us in terms of ensuring we do things. I am actually impressed that you're looking at both a small-scale farmer in terms of some of your outreach services, but looking also at the big projects like the Galana. Just to mention my peers, there was a cabinet memo on Galana 10 years ago that I was involved in doing for the commercialization of Galana. Probably it's somewhere in the ministry, but it was to go to cabinet and it was never approved. I am happy that 10 years later we are seeing that we need to focus on that and ensure that there is food productivity and safety, and ensuring that there's sufficient food for our people. Maybe it's time we look at that more seriously and probably move forward. Now, to go to the next few minutes, we have some panelists who will give us more presentations of about 5 to 10 minutes in terms of the same issue. Remember, we are looking about how do we leverage IT, how do we leverage technology, how do we leverage the information systems that is flowing. With this presentation, all of us now have realized there's so much information available. But sometimes when you're looking for this information, it's really not available. So I think there is need to see finally in this webinar, how do we then approach the issue of ensuring the information that is really available reaches the people who need to use that information for purposes of ensuring that there is harmony in the production. So Peter and Jonjo will come in. Peter is the CEO of Trigger. He will be the one to speak for a few minutes, followed by Emmanuel Kombenzai. Emmanuel Kombenzai is the CEO of Jumuiya ya County ya Pwani, basically the regional bloc for the coast counties. He's representing the coast counties. He will also share his views from the county level perspective. We also have with us Josephine Ngede, who is an innovator and will also be presenting something. And then we have Evans Bayer, who is going to talk basically about the role of IT in precision agriculture, and he will help us to understand that a little bit more. We have Rospela Alangat, who will not only look at the issues of being an entrepreneur, but how to mobilize the grassroots farmers in terms of ensuring that we reach where we need. So those are the panelists today. We have also Shane from the UK, who will also share something about post-harvest management. So maybe we start with Peter Njonjo. Welcome.
Thank you so much, and I also want to thank Professor Boga. We've been working together in the war room, the war room that is dealing with the COVID crisis. So again, working together hand in hand to solve this issue. So the presentation that I have today is more or less just to give a background of what it is that we're doing in solving the problem that Professor articulated. So a little bit about Trigger. We consider ourselves to have a purpose around improving access to lower cost and higher quality food across African cities. So far, we serve about 5,000 retailers, and we work with about, we serve 5,000 retailers every day, and we work with about 15,000 farmers across Kenya. So just a quick overview that was shared by Professor Boga. The issue that we're dealing with is around the cost of food. There's a significant amount of money spent on feeding ourselves. The other challenge that you find is that, and Professor already covered a lot of that, so I will not get into that. But the challenge that you find is that even with this state of affairs, we are not attracting commercial capital to solve this issue. We're not seeing banks lending money to people who are farming. Now, in Kenya, only about 3% of commercial debt is allocated to farming. And you heard that Professor, what he mentioned, that 60% of our economy relies on agriculture. So why would you have 60% of the economy relying on agriculture and only attracting 2%? And the challenge is around what we call fragmentation of retail. So if you look at the informality of retail across the city, for example, in the case of Nairobi, if you think about the greater metropolis, from Machakos, Kajiado, going all the way to Thika and sections of Kiambu that essentially are interconnected with Nairobi, give and take 6.5 million people, 180,000 retailers. So if I'm a farmer, who am I selling to? So what happens is that because of this informality, we have layers and layers and layers of intermediaries who've developed over the years. And these are what we call the brokers. And the brokers play a role because they're basically aggregating produce from very small farmers all the way to the city and then all the way back down to the small kiosks and retailers. So what do we do as a company? We're technology enabled, and what we do is that we aggregate the demand that sits in the informal retail, and we organize an efficient supply chain to then serve those markets. Now, I'll just quickly cover the 3 areas that we look at. One is around low cost. If you're going to lower the cost of food, then what do we need to do? So one of the things is around how we source, and that means that we're directly working with farmers. So right now we're working with larger farmers based on what Professor Boga mentioned, but on certain crops. On certain crops, we've worked very well with smallholder farmers, and we see ourselves continue to work with smallholder farmers. For example, bananas. We've worked very well with smallholder farmers, and they've been able to scale production. Some of the field crops like potatoes, tomatoes, onions, we may need to move to larger scale farmers and find a way to balance those two. Again, with some of the farmers that we're working with, we're seeing an increase of 4 to 5x in terms of yield, which we're passing on to consumers. Just to give you an example, this week, we launched an initiative with Jumia, where we're directly now distributing food directly to people's homes. If you consider the pricing that we have, we're selling at half, 50% of what supermarkets are selling. And these are some of the benefits we've been able to pass on to our kiosk customers. The second piece is, if you're going to be effective in cost, then getting to the 180,000 retailers then becomes very critical. And how are we doing this? We started using a lot of artificial intelligence in helping us map out and distribute product into the kiosks. Again, about material handling, Professor Boga mentioned about 50% post-harvest losses. In terms of the fresh fruit and vegetables, it's about 30 to 40% based on our processes, we've been able to cut that number down by 70%, and we pass on those benefits to the end consumer. Again, in terms of value-added services, we started providing working capital to retailers, again, all that leveraging technology. And another piece that is very, very important is that we've started food safety certification. And I think somebody had talked about minimum residual levels in the crops. So one of the things that we've done with our partners, IFC, we started certifying our farmers and ensuring that they're certified. And by March 2021, our intent is to ensure that we have global gap certification for all our produce. And of course, the last piece is around convenience. How do you then bring in technology? If you look at most of our kiosks right now, they're ordering using the phone, m-commerce. Right now, we have 40,000 kiosk owners who have downloaded the app and are using that to order every day. And this is all around creating a digital ecosystem on the food side of it. And then, of course, we're working on our delivery times. Just to give you an example, all our kiosks, they receive their product between 12 and 15 hours after ordering. And for the service that we started delivering into homes, people are receiving their product between 30 minutes to 2 hours. And again, we will continue fine-tuning that. And for us, success will be ensuring that everybody can access fresh produce through their phones. So that's it. I don't want to take too much time, and happy to answer questions much later in the presentation. So William, over back to you for the next presenter. I know that we are short on time, so we can maybe have some questions at the end. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's keep to the 5 minutes, please, so that we don't. Just 5 minutes would be good for us if you can present. So I would want to welcome Bernard. Bernard Akuku is the director of ICT at Calro, and he is going to bring the ICT perspective in all these agricultural things. Remember, Calro is also a research institution, and therefore it should be able to give us some of those things. So welcome, Dr. Bernard Akuku.
Okay, thank you. I hope you can hear me, the presenter.
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Can you see my screen?
But it's a bit low. You need to increase your volume.
Okay. Okay, what about now?
Oh, good, excellent.
Okay, thank you very much. Are you able to see my screen? I know time is running out. Is it possible to see my screen? Have you lost me?
We cannot see your screen.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. Okay, good. We can see it now. Continue.
Okay, fine. Thank you. I think I want to say that agriculture already facing a number of challenges. But again, now adding COVID and the locusts, the situation is even more difficult. So we have challenges from production to post-harvest. So those are basically the main challenge we're having. So in this case, we have to be strategic. And we are seeing that innovation is the way to go. And in this case, I'll talk about big data and disruptive technologies. And I'll also talk about how to integrate ICT research and other emerging tools, and how to increase digitization. Basically, how do we respond to the situation that we are having, given that we're already talking about a production system which is already not very good, an economy which is already fragile, and therefore we then need to use technology to disseminate the content that everybody need to have and then upscale. So in that case, we have an approach. We're using use cases. The PS talk about the use cases. And here we talk about digitization, innovation, disruption, and agricultural intelligence. So we must disrupt agriculture with technology. Technology has disrupted transport, has disrupted media, has disrupted finance. It's disrupting now, everything. And this is good disruption, so we must disrupt agriculture if we are to go forward. The first example I'll give is where we have used technology to provide weather forecast. In this case, we are using satellite data, which is giving us 6,756 virtual met weather stations. And it's able to give you weather forecast 9 by 9 across Kenya, and so accurate to your farm. And this is one way we have used technology to be able to address the challenges that are facing agriculture and using intelligence from technology, where we pick satellite data, convert them into virtual weather station, and we have it in mobile phone and a mobile app and on the web. If you type KOP, you will be able to get that Kenya Agriculture Observatory platform. If you go to Play Store and type KOP app, you'll be able to get it, and it can precisely give you up to 85% to 90% accuracy in terms of amount and time. So it will tell you the amount and the chance of the rain. So this is one way that we are trying to disrupt agriculture and to bring technology into play. You asked about how then do we get all this data? How then do we make use of it? The PS alluded to the big data platform that we are working on. And in this platform, we are going to collect the farmer data, which we already started registering farmers. We already registered about 100,000 farmers on the e-voucher. And what is critical to us is the GPS coordinate of the farm and also the SAP file, that's the size of the farm. With that, we are able to use technology to do so much about that farmer. With the GPS coordinate, we can see what's happened to that farm the last 100 years, and we are able to predict what's likely to happen the next few years or few months. We want to consolidate all the research data and all that in agriculture from the county, from the private sector, from the government, put them in one database, and that will enable analytics, will enable more use of data. We want to also understand where are the stakeholders. We have a challenge where farmers are saying, I have 10,000 bags, I don't know where to sell. And the buyer is saying, I need 20,000 bags, I don't know where to buy. So using technology, we can do distant matrix analysis and connect the farmers to the buyers and connect all the stakeholders and all the value chain actors with the farmers. And therefore, we intend to register all the stakeholders in this country. It's expensive, but it's our dream, so that we can be able to know what should you stock, who are the farmers around you, what are the value chain, what are the enterprises they're engaged in, so that you stock the right thing. Farmers live, walk so many distance, go to vehicles, call people in Nairobi, yet they have stakeholders around them that can be able to help them. We are moving into earth observation and remote sensing, which is very key. Today, there's a lot that we can do with earth observation data, and we are already engaging with NASA and other partners to be able to use, how can we use that data to do monitoring, aerial mapping, and other things. Soil data, climate data, I talked about it. Now, all this will go to the big data platform, which is already here in Kenya. It's the big data platform for agriculture for Kenya. It's already hosted at Calro. And we intend to do a lot of modeling. But the most important thing that we need to advise policy. We need to advise the PS, what's the food availability? What's the predicted yield? We need to turn research to demand-driven so that research begin to identify interventions that are really needed, the pain points of the farmers, so that we don't just do research for research, but we do research for farmers. And that big data and ICT is going to help us. That from data, we're able to tell what are the real constraints, what are the real problems, and what are the potential interventions. We need to empower the extensions, whether the NGO or government. We need to also empower stakeholders, I've talked about it. And the most important person are the farmers and pastoralists. So that's the framework, and that's what we need to do. And this is what we call the data ecosystem, where we're bringing all the data, all the players in agriculture, and harvesting all that data for various uses. And that's the framework we're going to use. So basically, farmers need to answer three questions, or we need to answer three questions to farmers: what to grow, when to grow, how to grow. And in this case, when to grow, we're building a service we're calling the crop selector, which will advise farmers what is suitable for your farm. Everybody's planting maize because we grew seeing our parents planting maize. Whether they're going to grow 1 meter or 1 feet, we do planting. Whether they're going to perform or not, we do that. So we need to run models, what we call agronomic models, to tell us what is suitable for farm X, farm Y, and farm E. We need to advise them when to plant. A loss of a 2 weeks delay leads to 70% loss.
Yeah.
So when to plant, when to harvest. I'm finishing and I'm running late. And then how to optimize the yield through how do you do monitoring and predictions.
You need to close now. You need to close.
Lastly, we are building services for farmers. The first service we are building is for the weather forecast.
Yeah,
I talked about it. We are building the crop selector, the crop monitor, and the agri-coach. We also need to look at the agribusiness. We need to look at the fintech, and we need to look at the government. So then we also have a call center, which we have established. Farmers will be able to call. We'll give you the toll-free number. And we need to see how then we move forward. And lastly, we need to return to the ABCDs of agriculture, where we need to see what are the pain points and how can we use technology. That is innovation to improve livelihood, digitization to make more data available and useful. Look at the value of data, and participatory and inclusive content development, where we develop content for the farmers. And I believe if you do that, we'll put more monies to our farmers. So what I can say that we cannot become what we want by remaining where we are. We have to engage technology, disrupt agriculture the way other sectors have been disrupted. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Bernard. And you have a number of questions.
Boniface, not Bernard.
I was told you're Bernard. Sorry. Thank you very much, Boniface. Sorry for that, Boniface. Sorry. You have a number of questions, and also Peter Giorgio will also have some questions. But let's limit ourselves to 5 minutes, if you will allow me, please, so that we can move faster. I will give now Emmanuel Zai, to do his presentation. As I said, he represents the counties, regional coast counties, and he probably give us some of the information he's gathered from the grassroots. Welcome, Zai.
Thank you so much. I do not have slides, and this is good. I will do mine for 2 minutes. With your permission, I will yield some of my time to my colleague. Dominic Biwott is the CEO of the North Rift Economic Bloc. He's here with us, and they're great farmers there, so I will share that with him. But I think mine is very, very simple, because I think the PS talked a good bit about the opportunities and the challenges which are there. And I think what is very clear is that we have plans, we have policies at the national government. There is that 9 strategies that he laid out very well. In fact, to the extent that the COVID-19 and pandemic or a disaster of this magnitude was probably anticipated, that there is a strategy. I think he also alluded that the challenge which is in there, which we are all grappling with, is that agriculture is a default function, but the national government, with all its very entrenched systems, somehow it's having a lot of challenges in sharing data and actually bringing the kind of incubation and enabling environment for the county governments which they require. So I think number one, I think if we can solve that, and especially right now, much of the bureaucracies can probably be broken. And I think Professor Boga has been taking a good lead on this. And I think Konza technology has kind of showed this way, that today Professor Boga can simply have a webinar with all the 6 coastal counties CCs of agriculture, with the data people who are not sharing data. And they can have interventions, they can bring in private sector, much of those linkages.
We have lost you, Zai.
That has been muted.
Someone muted me. It wasn't me. So I think my bit is this. I think right now we have an opportunity where I think the national government needs to do more to enable the county governments execute their devolved mandates. There is an opportunity for them to work with the economic blocks. There is some quarters in the national government who are not fully recognizing that layer, which the county governments have found it so important, and also some people in the national government and private sector. So if we can strengthen that base, especially now, let's begin now. And I'm bringing an offering here that this webinar that we are doing, we would like to host one with all our county executives, with some private sector, so that we can agree conversations on the rains have started today or this week. What can we do now? What can we do on the post-harvest? Can we talk about cold chains? Can we talk about storages that need to be done and invested in right now? So with those few words and way forward, with your permission, moderator, if we could invite my colleague Dominic Biwott to just finish up, please.
Okay, I will give, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Anzai. Dominic, we'll give you 3 minutes because we really want to hear about the counties as well. So from the North Rift counties, Dominic.
Thank you very much, William. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, I can. I can continue.
Thank you so much. Yeah, my name is Dominic. I'm the CEO of the North Rift Economic Bloc. This is a bloc that brings together the 8 counties in the North Rift region. And much ado without taking much time, I think listening to the PS, the national government outlined a lot to do with in terms of food security. I think a lot came out in terms of safety. A lot came out in terms of access. A lot came out. I mean, there is a good plan that came out from the national government. However, there is need to cascade this and have the counties have access to this information. That's number one. Number two, we have them participate in ensuring that this becomes a success. Particularly when we talk of the North Rift, 2 concerns come in. One is in terms of getting to mop the maize the farmers still hold in their stores, because whereas we are thinking of importing 2 million bags of white maize and the others, I think there is a lot that needs to be done from this other end. I don't know what the ministry has planned to ensure that the maize that is being held by the farmers in this region is mopped, because we had a meeting with the governors and the representative farmers and the CECs on Thursday last week, and that came out strongly that there is a lot that the farmers still hold. Number two is in terms of registering large-scale producers to benefit from the support that the ministry and the PS did mention. I do not know how far that has gone, and I know the North Rift offers a very good opportunity for large-scale farmer registration and support for production. Number three is going forward, Chair, is that COVID-19 poses a risk in terms of food security. We know that a lot is being done, a lot of efforts are being made by government, but there is need to support farmers, not only in improving the yields of the current crop, but more importantly, I think there is need to look at how counties and the farming communities would be empowered to look at short-term crops in terms of diversifying from maize, so that we are looking at sweet potatoes, we are looking at cassava, and any other short-term crop that can assure this country food security going forward. And the last one, Chair, is that as NOREB, I would really request that if this forum allows, we organize for such engagement. I loved the content and the contribution made by the partners. I would like to propose, and if agreeable, we organize a meeting that brings together the 8 governors of NOREP, the CECs for finance, and these stakeholders seated here so that we can go into the details and we get first-hand, one-on-one, first-hand information that comes from because I know and I believe if we can do this together, this region can make a serious contribution in terms of securing this country in terms of food security. Thank you, Chair. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Dominic, and thank you, Nzai. Those were great presentations from the counties. The challenge to our peers has been how do you support the large-scale producers? Another challenge is coordination on the volumes of maize that the farmers still have. And obviously, you have said we need to organize for another meeting, which I agree entirely that there is need to organize for a meeting. We thank you, John Tanui, for hosting us in this CONSA. I think CONSA is the way to go in the future and try to coordinate some of these high-tech meetings, because that is exactly what you should be doing. If you give us now, allow us to give a few minutes to Josephine. As I said, Josephine is one of the panelists, so she will come on board now and do her presentation. Welcome, Josephine.
Yes, thank you very much, moderator. Josephine Ngeve is an innovator as listed there. We have an ICT platform serving cooperatives across the country, mostly in dairy and coffee. It's a cloud product, so it is quite new. So in your questions, why do we need innovation? We need innovation to promote increased production, productivity, and income. So how does ICT innovation help us achieve this? We need the weather information. We need to know when do we plant. Right now, there's been a lot of confusion because of a lot of rain. Farmers, I was in Bungoma in February and the farmers were asking, do we plant? There's a lot of rain. This is not the planting season. We were drying our maize. So we need to have that weather information in a timely manner, because again, in agriculture, timely information is key. Extension services. We have so many extension providers out there. ICT can help us harmonize so that we have one message, so that we don't all, and we have a place that we can look. And I'm delighted that we have the big data, and I hope it hosts a lot of that current extension information to harmonize that. ICT can help manage the fragmented, confusing information that can go out there. ICT, again, is very useful in terms of inputs, availing inputs to farmers, be it when you need to credit score, and more importantly, when you need to distribute the inputs to the farmers. So you are able to know who needs what. And I'm glad there was an issue of mention of soil testing, so perhaps even getting the GPS and using the technology to do the soil testing, mapping, and all that would be something very useful. Markets, again, access to markets. When you have ICT, you can easily post your information on the market and also be able to get the, who needs what. Again, ICT can be useful in telling about the infrastructure. I'm glad we talked about infrastructure in agriculture. Where do we have the storage, the warehouse receipting, preservation, who does what?
Josephine, I would request if your camera can work during your presentation, would like to see you.
Okay, let me, yes, my camera is on now. Is that okay? Yes. You can see me now?
Yes, we can see you, Josephine. Continue.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I didn't do a presentation, but I think it's fine. Also, in terms of distribution, ICT would be very useful, especially now when we are having the COVID issue and we have constrained movement around different parts. If we had a platform that we would be able to know who has what, then we can be able to access it and distribute. So we know where there's supply and the demand curve. Of course, ICT is also very useful in terms of hotlines, being able to report, like when we have this incident of the locusts and also strange diseases. Remember, a couple of years ago, we had the maize disease. If there was a platform that we could report on these things, it would have been very good. So generally, I find ICT really covering the entire of the agriculture value chain and the food systems, and would be very useful that we are able to harness it better. I think the issue we have a lot is maybe the coordination and the use of some of these technologies. So what triggers innovation? I think we've seen a lot of innovation in the agri sector, and mainly the innovation has been driven by probably an entrepreneurship drive, and sometimes, of course, the donor push that, somebody says, can we do this? And that pushes the ICT. But I think the big question has been about sustainability. How do we commercialize some of these innovations? Sometimes the innovator is not the business person, may not have any entrepreneurial skills. So are they going to be able to get to really, push this product, or it will die at the, innovation stage, the first stage of the product? So for us, there was a question about our journey to innovation, partly pushed by innovation, by the development partners. I managed a project that was digitizing coffee cooperatives, and we did the project and learned our lessons. And after the project, we needed to get to a sustainability level, and we had to change to the value chain, because coffee commercialization, I think everybody knows coffee is not very, it's extremely, Kenyan coffee is world over well respected, but in terms of local farmer level, and the innovation was focusing at the farmer level, the farmer incomes are way too low to sustain technology, or maybe the technology was too early at that point. We had a couple of challenges, which I will allude to a little later. So the other thing that triggers innovation, of course, I said entrepreneurship. So it is in entrepreneurship, people try to solve a problem that they see. So what the challenges, of course, have been, the successes have been, it's taken a long time to get to a point that you have a stable product that is accepted in the market. Okay, relatively accepted in the market. We can't say we are there, but at least we have a stable product. And if you look at your competitors, you're in the competing space. Resources is a big issue when it comes to funding innovations. While you may be getting support from the development partners, it is not support that can take you to the sustainable level. So you need to fund that later, and it's difficult to approach and convince somebody sometimes when it's just an innovation, an idea behind the scenes, to fund you and fund you well. And also there is also the big question also about the proper intellectual properties and who takes care of your intellectual properties. You always fear that if you get into big partnerships, how do you structure that kind of an engagement for purposes of, yes, there is investment, but yes, how do you protect? We always hear of the M-Pesa case. How did the M-Pesa case come about? But basically, some of the funding is, a lot also comes from personal savings. A lot of the development supported now is just done in-house with our own resources, because we otherwise do a lot of consulting work and actually did the Food Security Action Plan. So the main challenges, of course, if I were to just give a little shot of our experience, product development to a stable, user-friendly product is an uphill journey. Takes a lot of time to be able to satisfy, like especially a cloud product, that you're able to satisfy the needs of many different users and get to manage it in a way that it is not too expensive, because you're dealing with very diverse, widely distributed clients who have little or no knowledge about technology. So the next thing, of course, is about promotion and getting to a point of acceptability. Product pricing is another challenge that is there because of the your clients, your target clients' ability to afford the product. Infrastructure, of course, has been a big challenge for us. Network, it's a cloud product. I need a cheap, available network, reliable. And widely distributed. All those do not seem to come at once. The dairy worked better because the dairies are usually located in urban centers where at least there's some level of network distribution. skills, people who are do we have well-distributed people who know how to work with these technologies? Yes, we have a lot of well-trained young people, but they're only concentrated around the urban areas. How do you get skilled people to be out there where your clients are and you're serving them? Updated data. I'm glad you talked about data, and I would talk about the data saying, yes, you have the data, but it's fragmented. I had the ministry talk about collecting farmer registration, but we need to go beyond farmer registration so that it's useful, which is getting their production capacity. What do they really produce? Knowing where they are and what they farm is just part of it. What do they produce? You need to find a way then to get to the dairy crops, the coffee crops, and getting a consolidated picture of the farmer so that somebody accessing credit can be able to look at the farmer from a holistic point, than just look from their mega gains from the different products that they produce. Smartphones, of course, is another thing, technology distribution. We don't have many people. We want to use apps that are most effective in getting us the data, but do we have the people having the apps, the phones, the smartphones, or the Imulika Mwizi? And of course, electricity reliability. I know we've worked a lot in terms of electricity, but we still aren't there. So finally, in terms of the sector preparedness, we really hit a hitch on that. You
can summarize now, Josephine.
Yes, I'm summarizing. As my last point really is about sector preparedness. You find that the people who are the gatekeepers, like if it's a COP officer and you're digitizing a cooperative, does he understand the use of technology? Because he doesn't, he'll tell them, don't use it. He'll not be able to help them appraise. And so that has been, I could say, our experience, but otherwise, it's something that we're passionate about and enjoyed doing. So I thank you really very much for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Josephine, for that really wonderful presentation on how you can leverage on IT and how you can be innovative at that level to be able to reach and to communicate to farmers. Now, would have now Evans Bayer. Evans Bayer also we talk about the role of IT in precision agriculture, and should tell us something about why ICT is lagging in adoption in agriculture sector, and how do we meet the farmers halfway to increase adoption? Basically, how do we use ICT for food security? Evans?
Thank you, William. We have been doing some research on the different types of technologies that, can you see me?
See you, Evans?
Can you see me?
We can't see you. If you can.
Yeah, my camera is on. So.
Have you muted your video? Check your video.
Okay. Can you see me now?
Not yet.
Okay, I've turned it on, so hopefully it will come up within a second.
Okay. All right, continue.
Yeah. We've been doing some research on technology adoption in various areas, not only in Kenya, but also other countries in Sub-Sahara and in agriculture specifically. And we are trying to understand what technologies actually are farmers adopting and why not for those that are not adopting. So precision agriculture, for example, we talk about greenhousing, we are talking about precise weather details, but actually we found a lot of farmers actually do not actually use that information. And we always go back, why? So I'll share some of the reasons why farmers are not necessarily adopting some of the latest technologies. Also, if you look at with the food supply chain, we have better seed, as Professor mentioned earlier. We have even equipment now, and farmers don't seem to adopt some of these. Why? So we have been trying to answer that question. We're still doing research. We have not finished, but we have some preliminary data that is very revealing. So let me give you a few reasons. I'll just give you 5. We have more than 5, but I'll just give you 5 right away. Number 1 is farmers, or most applications, farmers don't find that those applications provide them the right information at the right time when they need it. So for example, it's raining today, and I need to know how long is it going to be raining, and I also want to know what can I plant. So the information is there, but it's not contextual. It's just the weather data, but I also need to know about what I should be planting. And so we find that disconnect makes farmers go, oh, maybe I should not actually even use, the technology is not helping me. The second thing is, most data we find is not localized. So we have national data, yes, but I am in a specific area in Kiambu or a specific place in Nyanza, and I want data about my location. I want to know what can I plant, what is the market like, and most of that data is not local. It's national, yes, but it's not helping me in my local context. So we find that is an issue. The third element is really interesting. We have been talking about registering farmers. We find that most farmers are not sure if they trust us, and they trust the people who they are giving the data to. So we need to do some communication. We need to let farmers know why we need registration, how that helps them, how that benefits them, and you actually need to be a trusted steward of that data. So the trust issues is already starting to come up. It's really funny because we always challenge the farmers. We say, you can share everything about you on the web, on Facebook with your friends. How come you don't want to talk about your farm? For whatever reason, there is always that disconnect. The fourth reason that we find is we don't have clear incentives, which is also connected to what we just talked about, trust. So why am I doing this? Why am I using this specific technology? I am not seeing 3, 4, 5, 10 times the returns for the investment you're asking me for. And we have a lot of stories where farmers, for example, used irrigation equipment and they never got the returns back. Or they even farmed 2, 3 seasons and they never made their money back. And so they're always challenging, why should I adopt new technology? It doesn't mean they should not, but that is resistance. The fifth reason is culture. So someone mentioned earlier today in this webinar about maize. Let me tell you, we have been doing this since my grandfather and my father, and we have been doing it now for the last, as long as I've been alive as a farmer. So there is a cultural context that we must change, and not only in the farming side, but also on food consumption side, because most people are used to eating the same thing they've been eating for many years. And so because of that, they find that if I try to grow something new, and now, even if it's making...
Somebody should mute their mic, please. Somebody should mute their mic. Continue, Daktari.
Yes, so even if they could make more money, they don't always do that. One interesting case is in Kitui. We were encouraging farmers to grow more grapes, and we all know from agronomic conditions in Kitui, it has been very positive and very good for grapes. And most farmers, for whatever reason, they would never do it. And we started talking about why. And it all comes back to this issue of culture. I never ate grapes growing up. I don't know much about grapes. And even if we have market for it, there's still that level of resistance. So we are starting to find this cultural aspect major item. So one of the things that we would recommend, among a lot of other recommendations we are working on, is really communicating with farmers how and why and what the technology is and how it benefits them. One last thing is, do not underestimate local knowledge on farming. We went to a place in Migori where they are not using pesticides. They are using crop rotation, for example, and they have increased the yields in their farms significantly. And because they have local knowledge on the different types of crops and that they can work in the push and pull technologies and things like that they're doing. So the technology has to also incorporate local knowledge. And when we incorporate local knowledge, there is more buy-in and there's more adoption. So there's more to this work we'll be publishing later on, but really interesting what we are finding with farmers. Thank you, William. William, are you still there? Hello? Oh. As William is coming on, there's a question that was asked. Are there any value crops that you can suggest for Makueni? Yes, we have some research on that. Christopher, I'm more than happy to connect with you on offline and give you some ideas on what we found. Thanks. William, are you there?
Thank you very much, Evans. I think William is experiencing technical challenges. However, we can go through some questions as we wait for him to come around. Okay, so I'm looking at the questions from the participants, and there's one from Henry Muli. He's saying so much is happening on the agricultural front, yet the targeted grassroots participants and activity drivers are lagging behind in terms of knowledge. How do you get them to engage? How do we get to engage them more effectively?
So there are two things we have found. Some cases in Kenya and some cases in some other countries around East Africa region. We have always assumed there is a disconnect between the national government, the counties, and also the sub-counties and the local region. I want to, for those who are older enough, I want to take you back in the 1980s, early 1980s actually, when we used to have all these field officers all across the country that great resource for farmers. Those field officers actually used to engage the farmers in almost daily or weekly basis, and they became trusted partners with farmers. What we hear from farmers these days is, one, I don't see my agricultural officer that often. Number two is, I am not connected to market. And because I'm not connected to market, I am not always knowledgeable on how and what to do and how that affects the product that I'm working on.
Okay, so Dr. Evans, you can summarize it up now.
Yeah.
You sum it up.
Yeah, so the answer to your question around engagement is we need to have stronger presence on the ground, and then we also need to use the local knowledge so that the local farmers can adopt the technology you want them to adopt.
Thank you very thank you very much. Now we will have Dr. Langat. Please do your presentation and then we'll sum up these questions. Karibu.
Thank you, William. Thank you. I'm of the last you've seen, and my area of specialization is market information systems among small-scale farmers. But the most important is the fact that I actually work with them. I work with the small-scale farmers on the ground, and specifically coffee farmers. We are introducing coffee in the non-traditional coffee areas of Nandi and the Rift Valley areas. And there is a lot of learning that we've learned from it. That information is needed among the farmers. I like what the PS said, because he said they have a war room at the Ministry of Agriculture. For sure, the small scale or the large scale farmer, for that matter, the rural farmer, is the front line. Therefore, if we were to use that analogy to see how we can secure our food, or rather we can be food secure, then we have also to equip frontline soldiers who are the farmers, who are the grassroots farmers. But then how do we do this? We have to use information to get, we have to use channels of information to get the information to them. Because there's a lot of information from the discussion we have had today, especially from the ministry. A lot of research has been done, policy is there, but how does that information get to the farmer? Research has been done, and even from our observation, it's so clear that the social network structures are often more effective for knowledge sharing among the farmers. I think Evans mentioned that the farmer will always want to hear from the extension officer, a trusted extension officer. And the point is, I know the PS mentioned a lot about e-extension. I hope and I believe if that is implemented, that you get this information through the e-extension or even through the extension himself, extension worker himself, the county extension or the national extension, agricultural extension, it would be great because the farmer believes that. I will give you an example because I mentioned to you that at Toulon Coffee, we are actually introducing farming coffee and processing and marketing. And on the ground, because it's an untraditional coffee area in Nandi, we have to actually disseminate the information to the farmer. Many farmers want to plant coffee, but they don't know how to do the establishment. So what do? This is the part we play, all of us, whether you are a farmer or whether you are a researcher. We take the information from coffee research and give to the farmer. We share through WhatsApp, and they actually have done establishments. They are planting coffee using the establishment recommendations from coffee research. So therefore, if we get this information from the research institution to the farmers, that will be great. And I think that is the part that we need. We need this e-extension farming, e-extension services, and the extension services themselves. I am sure some counties do have, some may have a challenge, or even those that have, the challenge is the crops that they are used to. They have been doing a lot of, like where I come from, for example, maybe it's tea, or maybe maize or milk, but the expertise in coffee is not there. But then how do we transfer or shift the farmers to do other products that or other crops that are maybe more profitable? Yes, it's through the extension service, explaining to them and passing the information to them. But going back to this discussion today about COVID and post-COVID, what should be done? Yes, partnering, especially in the marketing aspects. Partnering, especially in the marketing aspects, will really help, because one of the key things is that we have a lot of crops now being produced by the small-scale farmers, but the market is, as you know, is choked. There's a bottleneck because of the challenges of transportation. I can give you an example. For example, for those of you that live in the urban areas, you know, they are normally farmers markets on the roadside. Because of limited transportation now or limited traveling, those markets are not there, or they are very limited now. So that means the crop is there.
Yeah.
So one of the key things is that how do we the farmers access that? And one of the key things, a recommendation from what we have.
Somebody needs to switch off the mic so that we can hear Dr. speaking, please. Dennis Okore, please switch off your mic, please. Okay.
My observation is possible, therefore, to set up community-level raw product collection points, because already there were farmers markets that were existing before COVID. During COVID and probably after COVID, maybe they will be there, but for now they are very controlled, because of course we don't want the spread to increase. But then can we have those collection points for the farmers to know where they are dropping their farm produce to? And then it can be then transported to the urban areas or where the market is. That's one of the key things. And therefore, this is where communication and technology comes in. If the farmers can be able to access technology that will tell them where the market is, where they can drop their products, they will do that. They have the products on the ground. But then it takes me back to the policy issue that I think I need to throw it to the policy makers. If you check, and I hope they have a plan, I hope they have a map of network coverage across Kenya.
Can I request Lucy Mbaye, please control your mic, Lucy Mbaye?
Yes, I was
Continue,
saying.
Daktari.
Yes, network coverage is one of the key issues. In fact, in some of the rural areas that I work with, there's no network coverage. They don't have Safaricom, they don't have Airtel, they cannot therefore access internet. So whereas we are talking here about getting online marketing for their crops, how then will they access that? I know there's a policy implementation that was done the other day by the government to put balloons in the air to boost network coverage. I hope it will cover, and I hope it will be aligned to the agricultural areas so that those that do not have coverage can get coverage, because that's one of the key things. The other thing also is when you think of a farmer, of course, the large scale farmers are different because they have managers, they have technology, but then the small scale farmer actually doesn't have like smartphones, for example. They have Kabambe that gives them the basic service of voice and M-Pesa. But then how do we then enable them to be able to get this information? So it requires a lot of work to be done, whereas we are putting in measures and policies. We have to also remember that on the ground, things may slightly be different, especially among the farmers themselves. And then the other issue was during this COVID period, it is also probably prudent for the government to put in a few temporary measures, like introducing a procurement scheme for the only, because the products, the commodities are there. They so in some areas they're harvesting.
You summarize now, Daktari. Time is up.
Yes. So those are some of the things that could be done, but the most important is the fact that if we could get the network coverage across and enable the farmers to be able to access network, it will help them on the ground, because the farmer, like somebody mentioned on the side there, they are not that naive. They have a lot of information. They want a lot of information. In fact, one of the key things the women farmers that I work with, the coffee women farmers on the ground, tell me is that, please give me the information. Where can I get this information? So if we can enable them to access that information, that will be great. One of the key things also, the last one that I'll mention, is about the education continuity. I know now education is going online, but among the farmers, whether it is passing information from agriculture or even for their children, for that matter, how do they access these technologies for education? Can we consider enabling them to be able to get, because of the poor network connection, internet, and maybe some areas they don't even have electricity. So while we are talking and discussing, please remember the small scale farmer on the ground, and especially those that are in the front line of food security, and women for that matter. They need this information, but they need to be enabled. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think now we will, our time has really gone, and I thank you for bearing. We will close in the next 15 minutes. So I would want Dora and Sheila to spend 2 minutes each to give their presentation. Sheila and Dora, please make some comments, and then we will make 1 or 2 comments by the panelists, especially the PS.
Great, thanks, Dennis. Hi, so my name's Sheena from the UK Kenya Tech Hub. So we are a UK government funded tech hub, but I'm based here in Kenya. So the British government, sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. So
we can, Sheila, continue.
Thank you. So the British government is working very closely here in Kenya through the British High Commission and hubs like myself and other programs like DFID. In fact, we work very closely with McKinsey to set up the war rooms, working closely with a lot of the CSs. We are part of a donor coordination committee where we're really trying to see how can we really work together in Kenya for the post-COVID crisis. So I'm the director of the UK Kenya Tech Hub, and one of the main things, so what we were sort of intended to do was help the Kenyan tech ecosystem with building skills, developing the ecosystem, and building linkages. we've pivoted very quickly to help say, how can we now support in the COVID response? And one of the first things that we're sort of doing is, of course, partnering with KONZA and the Countrywide Association of Hubs to start this hackathon. This hackathon that we're talking about, this COVID-19 hackathon, the purpose behind this is there are lots of local innovators that we have seen, personally worked with, all the way from Kisumu to Voi, Nairobi, everywhere, who've got some really good ideas to help solve the COVID-19 crisis, but also post-COVID. So what the purpose of this hackathon is how do we get these people together, support them, and then really scale those ideas to help deal with COVID. But as I say, COVID, I think we should take COVID as that opportunity to really now prepare quick systems that can help us in a post-COVID world. And our role here is how do we support these entrepreneurs? How do we support to help scale, to provide solutions that the government is looking for and the private sector? So a couple of things that came to mind with agriculture is let's use this as an opportunity for Kenya to become self-sufficient in producing our own food, potentially exporting our own food, and also creating money, creating jobs for people who are now losing their jobs because of COVID. So one of the statistics that really got me thinking was we spend about 12 billion shillings importing mayonnaise, but we have awesome eggs here. Why are we not using our eggs, and why are we not creating mayonnaise for us and also then to sell to the rest of the world? So a couple of things, and the strategy that I like to use is let's look at what can we do very quickly in the short term, what can we do in the medium term, and what can we do in the long term? And I was extremely excited to hear the PS's strategy around agro-processing, because I think that's exactly where we are. We need to create this value addition. So those are some really good medium to long-term strategies, and very excited and very keen to work to see how we can support this. But in the short term, there are a couple of ideas that we can do. So first of all is, how do we just link all these producers who are producing these things with the processors that already exist? And I think aggregators like Twiga and the rest are doing some really good work. We've already started kind of mapping the number of tech aggregators available, and we've already got more than 30. And this was a very quick exercise. What that means is there are lots of people in Kenya who are aggregating from smallholder farmers. And what that means is we can have the produce to link it to the existing processors whilst we're sitting there and developing more processing capabilities. But the second thing is, as we've mentioned, there's some really great innovators, whether they're looking at post-harvest loss solutions, whether they're looking at processing, whether they're looking at low-tech or high-tech solutions. And what we should be doing is, first of all, understanding where they are and helping scale and supporting them, particularly those ones near farm gate, because some of the challenges that we have seen quite easily are the cost of transport. We have seen cold storage, but there are lots of these innovators within Kenya who've got these solutions. Let's, one, find out who they are, and number two, find out how we can map them. Thirdly, we're working with another ministry around the youth gender agenda, and the idea is how do we set up an agri incubator or agri accelerator? Because what we also want to do is we keep talking about smallholder farmers, and we keep saying, right, they should be using technology. Yes, they should invest in inputs and they should invest in fertilizers. But why should they do that if 50 to 60% of their produce is lost? They're not getting money for it. It's getting lost because of post-harvest loss, pests or insects or weather conditions, or it's getting lost because the cost of transportation is too much. There's nothing more heartbreaking than seeing those tomatoes in the field rotting while people in Kenya are starving. So it's all about sort of how do we then, instead of just focusing on increasing their yields, but how do we make farmers into agri-businesses? How do we make it sexy or cool and get young people in this? Because that's also another way to make agribusiness something that people want to focus on. So agri incubators, agri accelerators are one idea, and what that also does it takes out the youth who are looking for jobs and really strives them into these areas. So those are the kind of initiatives that we're working on. And like I said, we divide our work into small, short term. What can we do very quickly, because we need to move quickly. But then there's certain things like bringing in investment, which we're looking at with impact investors, foreign international investors, local investors, co-investing, and how do we build this processing capacity? How do we build that talent to work in those things? So those are some of the ideas. At the moment, one of the first things, like I said, we're working on is with Hackathon, and I just want to give a shout out to the KONZA team and the Countrywide team for doing an amazing job. And I'm really, really excited to actually look at the innovations all across Kenya and see how can we support them to really, really come up with solutions and frame a Kenya going forward, not just for COVID, but actually self-sufficient, creating jobs and sort of, creating wealth for us here in Kenya. I'll stop there, but very happy to kind of connect with people offline.
Thank you very much, Sheila. That has been quite spot on. And you have actually raised very key issues on how we need to empower the farmer, how we need to link the markets, with the producers. It's actually a shame that we can import 12 billion worth of mayonnaise and we have eggs here. I think that's something that we probably need to take home and see what is it that we can do to ensure that we can leverage on this information system that is available so that the farmers can be linked to the processors. Because I think that's the whole issue, the information. What is coming up is that there is lack of information. Even what Evan said, lack of information. What Roswell said, same thing. So I think there is a challenge to us. How do we then synchronize all this information that bits and pieces are everywhere, and yet we can't have a whole picture of what really needs to happen? I'll probably give 1 minute to 3 minutes to Dora so that we can wrap up this section. Thank you. Dora? Dora from JK Watt? Are you there? Okay, maybe she's left. So can you hear me? Can people hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
because I was thinking, yeah, okay, thank you. So Dora is not in, looks like she's left for now. Yes, a few comments. Probably I would give the panelists, I'm sure you have been reading on the side there, some of the comments that people have raised. One of them, of course, is this information. How do we then synergize? How do we then collaborate? The information that Boniface gave us was amazing. The information that we've got from Evans, the information that Josephine put across, basically this is information that we probably need to see. How do we then move forward from here? Maybe I can hear a comment from our peers, if he's still there, on how do we really, because there is no lack of information. There is so much information, but how do we ensure these are channeled to the right place? Daktari, Prof?
Maybe it's left like an answer. I don't know it's there.
Yes,
Yeah,
if it's left,
I'm there,
okay.
I'm there.
Okay. Please,
I'm there.
Okay, please.
So I think, thank you very much for all the submissions. First, I would like to address the issue of maize, which was raised by Noreb. Number one, if the farmers have maize and the counties have ascertained this, the people to sell to is not the government. The people to sell to are the millers, because the millers are looking for that maize. And right now the prices are very good. Millers are paying 3,000, 3,200, 3,400, even 3,500. You can't get a better price for maize than that from the government, at least. This year and going forward, we are not budgeting for maize because we have seen in the past it has caused a lot of problem. Most of it ends up rotting in NCPB stores. It brings to the government very huge handling costs. If we buy a bag, for example, at 2.6, by the time we are selling it and all the services we have given to it, it costs 5,000 shillings, this bag, and we end up selling it at 2,500. So it doesn't make sense. And I think we need to strengthen the relationship between millers and farmers. And we are putting in place the warehouse receipting system where the farmers can store their maize to wait for a good price. Part of the challenge is they all enter the market at the same time, so it drives the prices down. We think a price of between 2,600 and 3,200 is good for the farmer and also good for the consumer. And that is where it has been throughout this year. This year we produced 43 million bags of maize. And usually our demand is about 50 million bags of maize. The 2 million bags of white that are being imported is just to give assurance of food security for the country. And it's not being imported by the government. It's being imported by the private sector. We have just reduced the duty from 50% to 14% for white maize, and from 50% to 10% for yellow maize. It will land here at a price above 3,000, which will still be competitive, which will still shield our farmers. So I think we just need to do this cultural shift for growing maize for government to growing maize for the market, which is the other consumer out there which is usually processed through the millers, and that is why we are turning the NCPB stores into commercial warehouses so that anybody can store their maize there, because most of the millers don't have large storage capacity. So I think this needs to be understood that this is a reform. We have discussed this as we are developing the STGs. We are implementing this. So the ministry is not going to engage in maize business anymore. Just like it's not going to engage in fertilizer business. The ministry is a policy organ. We want to have the best people thinking about solutions, not engaging in operational issues. We want those operational issues to be the preserve of the private sector, as is the strategy. But I know this is a political thing, but I think for the benefit of everyone, farmers, consumers, and the country at large, we need to make this transition into private sector-led interventions. Of course, we are monitoring the private sector and regulating, and we are not going to interfere with the market, but we'll make sure that everybody plays by the rules. So it's not the government to mop up the maize. The millers are looking for maize. Let the counties and the farmers direct that maize to the private sector. The prices are good, and they will continue to be good from what we are seeing. So it's a good opportunity for them to reap. And I've talked to the large-scale farmers, like Kruger there from North Rift, and they're saying, at least from, I didn't get a sense like they were objecting. Most of the time when we make these decisions, we consult with them. The only thing is the way we help large-scale farmers is not to give them fertilizer, or inputs, to address the issues of VAT and taxes. And even the parliament rejected the increase in taxes for farm inputs. So the farmers are getting the inputs at the same rates they were getting last year. We lobbied together for the VAT to be removed. But we can't do this e-voucher for large-scale farms. They are too big. Those are in serious business, and they understand the dynamics. They know how to source for their own financing. One of the things we want to really discuss is to work with banks to make it more affordable for farmers to access financing, make available land, shield the large-scale farmers from local politics, which usually interferes with their production system. I think that is where, as government, we ought to be, and we will be, as we try to roll out those large farms. As far as information sharing is concerned, I think as you can see, we have a digital strategy. Part of it is to work with the FAO to install what we call the Kenya Agricultural Information Management System, which is a one-stop shop for all agriculture stakeholders, and whose backbone will be the farmers register, and which we are just about to start compiling based on the data we get from Huduma number and also from the census that was just concluded, because they had farmer modules, and of course linking that to the data platform and the resources, the big data platform and the resources at Calro. But we'll bring everybody onto that platform. This is something that within the next 2 months, 3 months, will be up and running, and we hope we'll find all of you on that platform providing your services.
So if I hear you, Prof, you're saying that Kenya Agricultural Information and Management System is a drive that the ministry is pushing now to bring everybody on board. Because I think the challenge we're having now is, can everybody be brought on board? Because there's so much information out there. I don't know whether it's going to be a very big data kind of a system that will accommodate all of us in a way that we should be able to do our business within that.
Zambia is doing it, we should be able to do it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I would want also to a comment from Peter. Someone has asked, how are you managing? Because you're very good in aggregation and ensuring that you're maintaining the prices across the value chain and people are benefiting. Maybe you want to share your experience so that we can see, how are you gathering your information? How are your growers or your suppliers able to get this information?
So thank you so much. So a couple of things. One is we monitor pricing from all the wholesale markets. Wakulima, Mudurwa, Korogosho. So we collect price of commodities twice a day at 6 a.m. and at 12 p.m. And that helps us understand exactly how much each commodity is being sold within the city. And the second thing is, of course, with our farmers. What we've done now is that we started relying a lot on farmers that we've contracted for produce. And because of the efficiency that we're getting from our farmers, we're able to come in at a price that's much lower than the prevailing market price. So again, and the reason that we've been able to do this is by aggregating the demand in the retail. And all this is through technology. As I mentioned, most of the retailers now have apps. And through those apps, we get to understand the demand, where that demand is, and that allows us then to project what the market needs in the next couple of months, which has allowed us to start contracting more and more farmers. So again, it's an ecosystem that we've built over a period of time, and this has allowed us to aggregate information, use that information for decision making, which has made us competitive on price. And again, our objective is, what can we do to continue lowering the price of commodities in the market?
Thank you very much, Peter. I think our time has gone. Ladies and gentlemen, it has been such a nice time to converse. Thank you, Bwana PS, for making your time. Thank you, all the panelists. I must sincerely thank all of you, starting from Peter, Boniface, Biwot from Anzai from the counties, Josephine, Evans, Rosbella, and Sheila. Thank you very much. I think we need more time for this, and the challenge is to our host, Konza Tech, Engineer Tanui and your team. The challenge is yours. We need to see more of this, because I think going this direction, we can be able to somehow reach a way that we can be able to exchange information, converge, because there is so much ideas outside there that has come from here that we need to converge in some way and ensure we are moving to the same direction. Somebody has mentioned that even the system that is working in Zambia, that the PS alluded to actually, was designed by Kenyans. So we have information within us here. Look at the issue of the masks, for example. When Kenyans went ahead and designed, all we needed to do is they have gone ahead even on the quality checks and quality control, because probably the system and the policymakers were not prepared to ensure this kind of thing. But the innovation within our people and the fact that we can use technology even in production, in agriculture, in ensuring our systems continue very well, I think that is good. Again, as I sign off now, my name is William Kirwa again. I am a lecturer at Strathmore University, where we are doing we have a whole system of agribusiness unit where we are helping our farmers, those interested in the sector, to transform agriculture as a business, moving from just subsistence to commercial, making money in the sector. And that is the sector we need to move to. So I represent that unit within Strathmore Business School, and we have several courses that can be useful. The other one, of course, is ASNET. ASNET is an organization that is an umbrella body. I'm involved in the formation of ASNET, which we want to be articulating the issues of the farmer, ensuring that across the business people, across the value chains, across the BMOs, we have a voice. And we want to thank the ministry for accepting to work with us as ASNET to ensure that we can actually work together, the private sector, as well as the government and the NGOs, to do something for the sector. Finally, I would want to request the participants, those presenters, they have the presenters, to send your presentations to Konza, so that we can have that as part of the database that we will be referring to. So Konza will be able to receive, I'm sure you have your emails, and then also Konza can be able to coordinate, take our emails, take our addresses, so that we can be able to connect. So please send us the list of the emails and addresses of the presenters, and as well as the participants. I saw at some point we are 109 people participating, and that was very good. So at this point, I want to sign off. Thank you very much. I am now returning this to Engineer Tanui for a vote of thanks. Engineer Tanui.
Thank you, William Kirwa. You've done a very good job. We appreciate good work coordinating this event. Our PS, Professor Amadi Poka, we want to appreciate you and all the panelists and all those who have participated in this event. we've had you on the comments. We'll see how we can carry forward and establish a platform together with the other government agencies to see how we can have this as a regular event so that we can engage. In closing, we also want to remind you that we are running a the Great COVID-19 Innovation Challenge, which is available also on our website. Those who are able to put their ideas into some workable solutions that can grow into businesses, we will work with government, including our peers and others, to see that great ideas that are workable and can be used can actually be supported. Without much ado, also, we want to thank you and welcome you to consider CONSA as your place for investment in the long run. Thank you very much. So, Josephine, back to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, CEO. I think it has been a very engaging moment, 2.5 hours, actually 2 hours and 40 minutes. At this point, I want to thank everybody who has maintained momentum and stayed on until this point. As the CEO said, we are having the Great COVID-19 Innovation Challenge, and this is aimed to contribute towards the solutions to support government initiatives and also the challenges that we see emerging. So I am presenting our page. Kindly log on to our CONSA website and you'll be able to be directed on how you can participate. We welcome you to share this with your innovator communities and welcome to engage. We'll be having 2 more sessions such as this, one on health systems and the other one for a work challenge. So also be on the lookout for those as we work towards making this a success. And as we come to the tail end of this, I want to say thank you very much for being good participants, for maintaining the protocol. I think we all can say, despite the many more challenges we faced, we have had a good session. So thank you very much. Have a good afternoon and let's stay connected. Asanteni sana.